And the duck said, "Leave it on my bill."
Oh my God.
Viewer count down.
There we go. We open with dad jokes. Welcome everyone to Metatopia. We're happy to have you here. I'm Eric Lang. Made some games in the past. I brought four of my newish but good friends, Fertessa Allyse, Omari Akil, and Eric Slauson. Not Slauson, Slauson.
Yes, like the food coleslaw.
Here to just talk to each other about games. We're inspired a little bit by the HBO special Talking Funny, where some of the greatest stand-up comedians in the world just started talking to each other, talking shop. We are not saying we are the greatest stand-up comedians in the world. Some of us aren't funny in any way whatsoever. But yeah, we just figured like we invite you to sit along with us as we jam and just talk shop and get deep into the biz and ask each other questions that you probably haven't heard before. I remember meeting Fertessa. You are pre-Omari. It was last year, in fact. No. Okay, wait a minute. Sorry. 2020 was 10 years. So whatever. Like 2 years, 18 years, whatever ago. I remember we met at BGG-Con.
Yes.
Right.
It was last year.
That's right. We met at BGG-Con. I remember because we were introduced. We met you at lunch. We were having lunch with Jeff Engelstein. And I remember I'd seen you before, but I couldn't quite place you. And I remember just listening to you talk about games for 10 minutes, just sort of casually talking about games. I was like, this one is going to be a superstar developer. Do you remember that? Do you remember the initial talk we had?
No, I mean, I remember us eating barbecue, and I remember
it's Texas.
Man, this is Eric. Man, this was really cool. Probably not on his radar at all. But I have no idea what we were talking about. My brain blipped it.
It happens to. I don't. Yeah, it happens to be a lot too. I remember I met Omari at the next show. I met you at. I met your game Rap Gods at. Oh my God! I want to say Philadelphia Game Expo at not PhilCon. So it's 100 years ago. At PAX Unplugged.
Yeah.
I remember because I'd seen your game. I was like, oh my God, somebody finally made a gamer game about the rap industry.
Yeah,
and
that was us.
And you know what the funny thing is? I assumed that it was just going to be I assumed it was going to be some local game industry guy, right? That I just hadn't heard of at the time. I didn't realize it was going to be a newcomer to the industry. And I heard it. So I heard of your game before you, and then our mutual friend Amber Cook, right? She introduced us both.
Yeah. I mean, I sort of stumbled upon you and Amber sitting around chatting, and just kind of waved timidly, and then Amber was like, "Yeah, come here."
I love that.
Pretty interesting. Yeah.
What was that show like for you? Was that your first really big show?
So not exactly. We had brought a really rough prototype to PAX Unplugged, the first PAX Unplugged. So that was our second time being at that show. So it wasn't the first big one. We had gone to some big ones after that. I think we've at least been to Gen Con also by that time. So I think we had been to 3 to 4. And yeah, I was also surprised that I had never actually run into you in real life. I knew of you, and I was like, I keep going to these cons. I feel like I should see Eric Lang at some point.
Well, that PAX Unplugged is huge. Like, for example, I don't even, Eric, were you at that show?
All of the PAX Unplugged. I was at the first one and kind of wandering around, and I think I was running a booth at the second one for the whole time. So yeah, I've been around. We have been and I have been in your orbit for quite some time.
I love that I'm a planet.
Planet Lang. I'm down with it.
Yeah. I
Ooh,
don't think we
yes.
have we met in person?
No.
Yeah.
Nope. No, only
Well,
online.
that is according to you, but we have met in person once. But if you didn't know who I was, I got
Oh,
into an
really?
elevator with you at Dice Tower Con in Florida, and we were
Dice Tower
staying in
Con.
we were staying in the same hotel. I got in the elevator, and it was just you and me in an elevator for 7 stories, and I did not say a word. It's like, because the only thing that was running in my head was like, "Hey, just say that you're both named Eric," and that's all I could say. And then I was like, "No, that's dumb. Don't say that." And I just kind of went, "Hey, I like games. I make games." I couldn't figure out what to say, and so then you just kind of like said, "All right," and gave me a nod and left because we just rode in silence for 7 stories. So that's how we actually met.
Oh, that's amazing. I want to tell you, I remember that. Isn't that funny though? Like it's so fun. Like our industry. So y'all haven't been in the industry for like a ton of time. Like I've been in the industry for like 25 plus years, right? But it's so I've internalized that the idea that that our industry is so close knit. Everybody knows each other. We're all friends and stuff like that. I keep forgetting that there are generational gaps, like big time, right? And I've never gotten used to the idea like that. I just assume if somebody wants to talk to me, they'll just come up and say hi, hey, what's going on, and because we're all gamers, right? We'll hang out. But yeah, that's clearly not true, because I remember back in the day, probably before any of you were born, I had the same issue trying to talk to Richard Garfield, right? I cussed him in a washroom. I remember that. I cussed him in a washroom at Origins. And I was like, oh my God, it's him. Can I say this? Oh, Dr. Garfield, hi, I'm a big fan. And you are peeing, right?
I love the way that you pee. I've never seen anybody do it. You're changing the game.
That's right. Yeah, I totally get it. But I'll bet you, it's not funny how cyclical this is. I'll bet you he was thinking the same thing. It's like, yeah, just come talk to me.
Yeah.
Like, we're all nerds, right? We're just hanging out, doing our thing.
Well, that's a good question. Like, because we're talking about like, oh, we got to, meet Eric Lang or whatever. Like, who are people, Eric, that you like have been trying to find? Like at conventions, you were like, oh, I gotta make sure I run into, this person. Is there anybody who you would like to get caught in an elevator with and not talk to for 7 stories?
And not talk to, at media cons like San Diego Comic-Con for sure, right? In our industry, I pretty much know everybody. Like it's like I said, it's generational. So like everybody's sort of my generation. We all know each other, right? And we're kind of the old guard, which sounds really weird to say, because I still feel like that scrappy kid that's trying to get his first game published. But like at San Diego Comic-Con, sure. If I got, I could imagine, right? If I run into, I was going to say Stan Lee, rest in peace. But I mean, I tell you, I've never met Stan Lee in my life. If I had, I would totally be like, I'm in an elevator with Stan Lee. Right? Do I say Excelsior? Do I do it?
You have to say
do
it.
I? Would he just would I get the world's biggest eye roll and then just die inside a little bit? Like I don't know. I don't know. I did once. At Toronto Fan Expo. So I live in Toronto, which you should totally go to. One of my best memories is Fan Expo is a big show like San Diego Comic-Con, like 100,000 people. They invite a lot of celebrities, comic book celebrities, but also music industry celebrities. I remember Alice Cooper was there. I've been a fan of Alice Cooper since I was a kid, right? I remember walking, I was going up an elevator, he was going down an elevator, and I was like, I just held out my hand to give me a high five. I was like, all right, that's it. I don't remember anything else. I was exhibiting, right? I was doing panels and stuff. I don't remember anything else about the show, except I got a high five from Alice Cooper.
That's awesome.
That's so cool.
Yes.
Fertessa, I don't know how long each of us has been like in it officially. I think that I'm going into my 6th year. I don't know how long, Fertessa, you've been, again, it's circling around, and I feel like you've exploded in the past, 9 to 12 months. But yeah, I'm curious, what you've been up to in the shadows.
I mean, I started my hobby design journey 3 years ago, 2017. So it was like summer 2017. And like it was the same time I was deep diving into hobby games in general, because at that point I only knew the mass market games. And whenever one of my friends brought up game design and I started thinking about like what would a game be if I designed it, that's whenever I started diving into game design while finding like all these other games, because you can't research game design without like having to play so many different games. So joined a bunch of different meetups, went to play, like every game was a new game to me. Like when somebody taught me Splendor, it was just like, oh my God, what is this game?
I'm sorry, Fertessa, you've only been playing hobby games for 3 years?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
No.
That's crazy. I can't even.
Yeah,
I would never
right now.
Ever.
That's bonkers.
yeah.
Ever. That's
Yeah.
wow.
A quick study.
What? Seriously?
Yeah.
That's
Because
brilliant.
it was, I didn't really like, there's not a lot of big hobby game stores in Georgia, at least not where I was based. There were comic stores and they would have like in the back Magic and there were a bunch of like games, but it just felt very much like isolated from whatever. So I just like would browse the comics and be like, looks like the cool secret club, and walk out. So I just didn't know, other than I did trading card games. I did Yu-Gi-Oh! And I did Magic for like a year, maybe half a year.
So you played Yu-Gi-Oh longer than Magic? So
yes,
like
I played Yu-Gi-Oh for years, even tournaments.
Which was first?
What, Yu-Gi-Oh?
Did you play Yu-Gi-Oh first, or did you play Magic first?
Oh, Yu-Gi-Oh for sure.
Okay, so see, that's again generations, right? So you played Yu-Gi-Oh first, then you got into Magic, and Magic didn't stick, and you went back to Yu-Gi-Oh. Is that sort of how it was?
So Yu-Gi-Oh was the big thing in my high school, and like we would just play that in math class. Learn your lessons, but we would play card games in class. And that was one of the big popular ones, along with the TV show, which was on at the time. So we would just be making up rules, because I mean, Yu-Gi would make up rules, and it was really fun. But Magic, I wasn't introduced to Magic until college, and like I played it one time, but the person didn't really fully explain the rules, so never played it again until like years later, which would be around that 3 years ago mark. And my boyfriend and I were both interested in like doing Magic, because it seemed like the rule structure and the fan base was like a lot stronger, and you didn't have to trade out as many cards or get bans in the same way. So we tried that, but I ended up feeling like I had to go all in for Magic and not like just some of the times. And I was like, I don't have the money for that right now.
That's, you know what, you actually, that brings up something, right? Like, because I want to know from all of you, right? It's different for everybody, but I've noticed for a lot of people, there's a moment in your life, and you usually remember it. There's a moment in your life when something changed and you knew you were going to be a game designer, right? Like, even if you've been doing game design your whole life, often with a lot of people, there's one moment where you're like, this is me, this is my identity. Did you have a moment like that?
Ooh.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, the thing that first came to my mind was, I think it was the first game that I made, called Tales of Asteria, and it was this like dudes on a map kind of risk-esque game, and you were trying to go around and collect these like parts of a mystical staff that was broken apart. I had like a whole 2-page backstory written. I didn't know what I was doing. But yeah, I brought it to game night, and we played it, and it was not good, but everybody was like very being a good sport about it. But as we got in, the systems started kind of falling into place, and they were like, oh, what do you mean I have to wager whether I'm going to defeat him or not? Or what do you mean I have to, I was kind of introducing some of these little interesting mechanics. And at the end of the game, people were cheering when they were, collecting parts of the staff, or people were, like yelling when they got, player eliminated or whatever. Because of course I had that in my first game.
Of course.
So yeah, I mean, I remember just having that experience of seeing people have emotional reactions to something that I had made on index cards and printed and laminated and stuff. And yeah, I was hooked. And I think that was kind of the first.
So it was the reaction. Was it the connection that you were getting from the players? Do you think that was it? Like that, was it that validation, or?
I think, I don't know, because I was kind of, GMing, like I wasn't actually playing. I was just watching to see how other people played, because I had done research on prototype or play testing, and I think it was more just that the idea that I've always been fascinated with how like art allows you to make someone feel something from afar. You make a film, and years and years and years and years later, somebody rents it and they're crying, because of your beautiful story or whatever. And like I've written, and I've done stand-up comedy and all kinds of stuff, and it's always been about like, how can I make something and then send it away and not, I'm not in the room, and somebody experiences it and they have some sort of visceral reaction. I find so fascinating. So seeing people like organically cheer, and people make alliances in the middle of the game, and stuff that I didn't even bake into the game itself, on purpose anyway, was really fascinating to me. And then I kind of pivoted into party games, because that turned to 11, right? You're really hoping for belly laughs and people laughing until they're crying and stuff. So, but it started with that moment of like, oh, this is like making people feel something. Yeah.
Wow.
What are you, Omari?
That moment for me was actually, we had Rap Gods pretty much done. And I basically thought that was a fluke. And, I had figured out how to turn this thing I care about into a game. And yeah, that was cool. But we had been talking about other game ideas. And the second game we were starting to work on was Graffiti Nights. It was a 90 card game. We talked about like conceptually what that would look like. And I think it was me sitting down in the course of like a weekend after having that discussion about that game, and I really just cranked out what was a fairly solid design in a weekend and made a prototype, and we tested that out, and it just sunk into me that like my process and just my ability to create these experiences in this format actually works really well for me. It works with all of the ways that the gears turn in my head, and just that feeling, because like we played it that first time and it was like, whoa, this kind of sort of works. And it was just being able to go from idea to something that is tangible and workable and fun. And yeah, and I think because it was able to happen in that time span, and I was doing a lot of it on my own, it really felt like you actually are okay at this. You can actually keep doing this. And that working on that second game really gave us, I think, and myself, more confidence to even think about more ideas. I was really not sure how much farther we were going to take it. And that really was like, no, let's put every idea you have into a notebook, and we'll do as much as we possibly can with this, because I think this is it.
Oh, that's awesome.
What about you, Fertessa?
For me, I would say that the moment happened more gradually as I was kind of validated in my journey, because for me, I think that as a creative, I was always trying to find a way to express myself and get the feedback of, you know, I have been heard by the people who have seen or interacted with my content. So I would try writing, drawing, video editing, and, you know, just all sorts. I made parody videos for a while. It was just different things, but things didn't stick. And when I got to board games, you know, I was just like, well, I'll do this one game. Like, I went into it for the longest thinking it would just be the one game. In fact, my Twitter handle, because I made a Twitter just for it, was Book of Villainy, because I was like, that's it. I only need that. And, you know, I made that. And, you know, as I went through my journey with my first game, Book of Villainy, and I started doing contests and I started interacting with people, I realized that I was getting a lot of feedback and a lot more interest than I initially thought I would get. And I realized that things were sticking and that even my behavior was changing, because I'm actually a huge introvert, or was. And so, you know, board game design and pursuing my passion in it had made me interact with so many different people, go to so many different places, because I'm a homebody, but I've had to travel around to get my game out there. And just like looking back at myself before board games and then myself currently, like at some point in that year, I was just like, this is amazing. Like, I was working a 9-to-5 job that had nothing to do with my passion. I couldn't use any creativity, but I could use my game to express myself and just be fulfilled. I'd go home, like, I'd be tired all day at work, go home energized, ready to just go to the prototype, ready, see people contest, getting people to test that don't even play games because they were trying to support me. And it was just like, this is it. This is the thing that I've been waiting to be a part of. So yeah, that was the culmination of my moment.
Awesome. See, I have this. Sorry, Omari. I've got to say, I'm going to interrupt you, sir. Sorry. Listen to your elders. Sorry, I just want to, because I want to touch up upon a point here. I feel like I have a theory, right? There's a theory that there's a sort of a stereotype, right, of creative artists, especially of technically creative artists, right? Like game designers, like production designers, like that. We're all sort of introverted and kind of beta and shy and whatever. And I think there's something to it, but I feel like Fertessa's story really resonates, right? Because I was very much like that, right? I went through that, what I thought was a transformation, but I don't think it was. I think it was a revealing, right? I think getting into the craft, it doesn't change who you are, it reveals who you are, right? And that empowerment, right, is, I find that was the motivation for me, right? I was like I can do this, and I can actually add something. I can add something to the world, right? I can add some net joy, whatever that is. And that's like, that kind of purpose is just cool, right? I know it sounds like unbelievably sanctimonious, but I really do believe that.
That makes sense. I think that, right. You know, as I'm thinking about myself, I'm also very introverted in real life and a homebody.
No, you're not.
Ironically.
You're not.
You know, but I, at conventions, or, you know, the things that I have done, I've always put myself in situations that required me to be extroverted. Like, I chose the teaching career, you know, go in front of a group of 30 teenagers who hate English and make them read Shakespeare, you know, or, you know, I did stand up, you know, go into a room of people who are daring to make you laugh, you know, or to make them laugh. And then, you know, game design, where, you know, it's a crowded field and something I hadn't known before, but all of them involve like me, you know, pitching myself and putting myself out there and interacting with people. And, you know, I think as I started trying to market myself as a designer, you know, as you're trying to get you're trying to pitch, not only a game, but yourself, because publishers want to work with people they like, and you have other services that you offer, development or whatever. I started realizing and reflecting on like, oh, I really like making people happy. Like I got into teaching. Yeah. I got into teaching because I wanted to introduce my kids to the books that I love and to the power of writing and all that kind of stuff. I did stand up because the idea of making a bunch of people laugh and making their night was intoxicating to me. I got into party game design because I also, I wanted to provide that time of getting around the table and laughing. And, some of the games that I design heavily involve art because I know how how good that feels to make art and, and share it. So yeah, I think there's something to that, making games and the process of making a sell sheet, even when you're like, the game is good because of this, and I did this because of this, and thinking about your craft can really illuminate some things about you as a person and what your goals are as a designer. Totally. That's interesting.
We interrupted you, Omari.
Oh, it's fine. I was just literally going to say that the first time I met Fertessa, I just saw all of those things that she was describing, like that energy.
Yeah.
Exactly. We were talking about the prototype. I was asking some questions about bookability, talking about where she was going with it. And like, I felt it immediately. And I was like, oh yeah, this is great.
Yeah, you knew she was a born designer, right?
Yeah, it was so immediate.
Yeah. I know. It's weird. We're artists, right? So we're critical of ourselves, of course, right? So I've never in my life, I've never met a good game designer that did not have some manifestation of imposter syndrome, right? And generally, the better they are, the worse it is, right? I've been doing this for 25 years. I talk to panelists that are of equal experience, right? We'll get up there, we'll do a panel for 20 people, right? And we'll be like, oh my God, what are we here for? Nobody's gonna what do we have to teach anybody? I'm just gonna want to listen to some idiot just talking about stuff you already know, right? And the internet really exacerbates that, right? Because the internet is this collective, all-knowing repository. So everybody comes off as if they know everything, right? Yeah. So what do I have to add to your life? You already know everything, and that sort of feeds itself, right? And it's funny because I talk to that, right? Like I talk to people like Omari, right? It's like I'm no good. I'm like, dude, you did 2 board games by yourself, self-published them, got instantly way more people know you than knew me when I was at the point in my career where you are. Right, in a much more crowded field. For when I was starting, there was 10 people in the world that did maybe 10 people in the world that did this full time. Right now, there's hundreds and hundreds. Right, so it's way harder to get noticed now. So there's got to be something really special about you. Right, which, by the way, as I told you, I was going to embarrass you, which is why I want to bring you out here. Right, because that. I think there's something going on, right? And in Fertessa's case, right? I tried to hire Fertessa, right? I tried to hire for one of the publishers I do consulting for, and I was too late. Funko got her first. It's fine. It's fine.
He's not bitter. He's not bitter about it.
Not bitter at all.
You're not invited to any more panels. It's fine.
Oh.
Right.
I cried myself to sleep.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You will. I played. I played Eric's game. So I played. Yeah, I played Eric's game Monstrosity. Right. With some good friends of ours. And I swear to God, we put up on Facebook. That's how thrilled we are. And I know friends are nice to each other because we're playing our friends' games and stuff. But we all had a bad week. I think it was 3 weeks ago. Things were going on in the news, and that were less than good. right? And so we had that stress going on. We had COVID stress going on, and we just played your game on Zoom. By the way, everybody who's watching this should definitely pick it up. We're gonna be pimping your stuff here, but we played, and it was just a delight. It was just pure delight. To reconnect with friends, but also just to be so effortlessly, like to have the game channel that so effortlessly, right? And it was one of those things that my friends make fun of me because I called after that. I went to Amber and I complained to her. I'm like, I'm jealous of Slauson. Like, the guy's an avatar of fun, right? And it was one of it helped me articulate something that I was trying to get, the thought that I've been having for a while, right? And it's a kind of a through line to where I am now. It's sort of why I want to bring all of you together, right? That the humanity of game design is something we don't talk about that much, right? Like, it is known as a technical discipline, right? And of course, you got to know your math, you got to know your psychology, and there's a very, very technical, objective side to it. But the personality, the point of view of the designer really matters, right? We could, the four of us could pitch a game right now. Anybody could come in and pitch a game, and the four of us would come up with something completely different, right? And that's amazing, right? Off the exact same log line. I think that's super cool. I'm looking at the time, going at 6:31. Janet.
Yes, Eric.
Do you have questions from the panel, from the audience for us?
As a matter of fact, there really aren't any questions right now, Eric. But audience people, if you'd like to ask questions, just type them right in, starting with the word question, and I will relay them to our panel. But you won't know if I'm the good Janet or the evil Janet. Why don't you guys talk for a few minutes more, and I'll let you know if there are any questions.
All right.
Thank you, Janet.
You're welcome.
Well, here's something I've been thinking about, because this is I always feel like a kind of a dangerous question, because we've been talking about for Tessa, obviously, only 3 years in, you're somewhat of a wonderkind or a natural or something like that. And Eric, you were just talking about how I understand fun in a different way than you do, or to ease more easily. So I'm curious, like, if you have to think of it as natural instinct or natural skill versus your design knowledge, what do you think is your breakdown? Like, if I feel like I run 80% instinct, like of what I think is going to be fun or funny, and then I buckle down with 20% of mechanics, and what I know as far as downtime and all of my research. But I'm curious where you guys see your split, of does your first idea work? How often, that kind of stuff. How much do you feel like you're a natural at this?
Oh, well, for me, I'm proud. I feel maybe like 60-40. There's so many times that I'm working on games and trying to, figure out how to solve a problem. And I trust my gut a lot. I trust my instinct a lot. I obviously rely on playtesting and work through some of those more technical issues for balance and things like that. But I tend to make a lot of decisions off of just instinct and what I think people will enjoy. And sometimes that's contrary to some feedback that I'm getting. If it's a specific vision that I have, and I'm like, I understand that feedback, and sometimes it ends up being the case where I still go with my gut on something. And so I feel like I lean into that a lot more. And it's often just some part of the vision that I think will actually work when it's all said and done.
I think for me, I put the ratio at maybe 90-10, just because a lot of games are still very, very new to me. And I also have a kind of tunnel vision when it comes to projects. So I like to have the one idea and then throw everything at it and see what everything feels like, because I'm very much a kinetic learner. So I just need to do it and fail through it and see why it doesn't work versus somebody telling me or me thinking it through. So I will just treat the game like a piece of clay and just keep building, or rather Legos. I always say Legos, because that's why people would say my iterations would be so different from one to the other, because it's basically, yeah, I'm using the same Legos, but I'm building an entirely different structure. And, I didn't have necessarily the technical knowledge, especially when I started, to just say, okay, this would work or this wouldn't work because of that. But as I'm using this kind of, I guess, instinct to do these things, I am learning through that. So all of those experience I can put towards new projects and new games. But still, I do like to, whenever I get suggestions, feedback, I like to just try it out and see, what if maybe I'm looking at it, because also your brain considers things with different perspectives. So even if it sounds weird, if I try it out or if I have the person explain it, I was thinking of it in a different way, and it could be a totally good fit or not. And, that's how I generally like to approach things.
Yeah, I'm going to answer your question of course, by reframing it, because that's what we old fogies do, right? I appreciate the question, right? And I asked that question a lot when I was back when I was a youngin', but because my answers changed so many times, right, over my career. Like you would ask me 10 years ago would be totally different from what it is today. I would think of it as like it's a sort of a derivation of the art science duality and the nature nurture duality, right? What to me game design is like 5 to 10% science, right? It's 10% rudiments. And what I mean by that is, like, in theory, right, you could take any game, especially if you're in the computer game industry, right? You could take somebody who has zero technical knowledge, zero technical experience, so somebody who doesn't have the deep knowledge of how game systems interact, and go, this is best practices for a worker placement game. Make this into a better product, right? They could probably do it with very little knowledge just by messing around and given a little bit of time, right? I'm not saying game design's easy, but it takes a while to get there. But I think the thing that makes the game designer, at least for me, is point of view. And what you're calling instinct, I'm calling point of view, right? It's where are you coming from when you make that game? Right. And it's what I was talking about before, right? If you had asked me to make Rap Gods, I would have made a very, very different game from Omari for two reasons. Number one, I don't like rap. But right. I just got kicked off this channel. Like, I don't dislike it. It just never did anything for me. Right. But so I would have hit something that. But I'm fascinated by the music industry. I'm also a musician, right? But I'm a rock and roll blues guy, right? So I would have, if I had to do Rap Gods, I'd come at it very clinically and very second person, right? And I'd be getting a lot of my feedback I'd ask people like Omari or some of my friends that are fans of it. But you'd feel that, right? You would feel that if the game was complex enough. My lack of environmental nurture would come through, and it could be a technically excellent game, right? But it wouldn't have there's elements of Rap Gods, right? Like beef, right? The way you handle beef in that game, I would never have thought of that, never, right? Because it's I'm not there. It's not part of it's not a noetic part for me, so I would have defaulted to what is a good style of interaction? Where does that map, right? And it's a little bit anti-current dogma, right? The current game design dogma,
Yeah.
right? Where a type of interaction a lot of people don't like. I loved reading your article about your point of view and why you designed. I want you to talk about that a little bit, because you will say it better than I did. But specifically, like why your tolerance for luck and your luck and externalities in Rap Gods, where your background, how your background informed that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it was a couple of things. I think just growing up, the prevalence of luck in a whole bunch of different scenarios, and in a lot of ways also the presence of dice. I mean, I grew up, and when I was in high school, like kids was shooting dice in the bathroom, between classes and stuff like that. So there's pieces of that resonate with me, and also just like understanding that where I've come from, where I grew up, I always kind of felt like the lucky one, the one who kind of was able to navigate the world in ways that I was very fortunate, and I got great opportunities. And, I ended up going to an HBCU and then doing internships at MIT and University of Washington. And like those things, like didn't necessarily feel like I worked crazy hard for them, and I was just in the right place at the right time. And these are the things that obviously influence the designs that I do. And so I feel like that component, that idea of just like luck playing a huge role in my success, is tolerable for me in games because of that.
Okay, guys, we actually do have some questions queued up. So, by the way, everybody,
awesome.
Go ahead, Eric.
Sorry, Janet, continue.
I was going to say we've got 5 questions queued up, and each one of these.
Okay, great. I just want to.
Yeah, go ahead, Eric.
I just want to follow up on something Omari said, right? Because it touches on something that I really didn't want to talk about in this panel, but it's such a natural jumping off point. In my experience, right? I would never have done a panel like this 10 years ago, right? I grew up in the game industry, surrounded constantly by people who have closer DNA to Gary Gygax's game group, let's say, right? As demographically speaking, right? And so the reason what you said struck me so profoundly is it reminded me of a background I'd completely forgotten about, because through immersion, I've been surrounded by by an immense pool of talent in the industry, right? But their demographics and their background, I sort of absorbed the sense that, well, yes, you're entitled to that, right? You like success is meritocratic. You get it because you earned it, right? And that's where the German School of Game Design, right, which is a big part of my discipline, and I treasure it, right? But there's a background to that informs that, right? That where is the assumption, the underlying assumption that gamers want lower luck, more skill, as an absolute statement, right? And it sounds good, and there's something to it for sure, right? It created an excellent school of games, but I kind of lost touch with the idea that, wait a minute, that's not the be all end all. That's not everything, right? And there's vast swaths of people for whom that isn't the natural state of things, right? And that's not necessarily going to resonate, right? Not going to resonate as much. Anyway, sorry, I want to bring that because I really that hit me like right where I live.
I get it. It's been interesting to design games with that frame, definitely.
Oh, for sure. I appreciate like the point of view that you all come from, especially, well, you're really new to the industry, right? You have these unique backgrounds. We didn't even talk about like Eric's artistic background, so I'm going to shut up through some of the questions. But Like the way that you've approached games is so different from the way that a lot of the more established designers do. And I want to say publicly that how much I appreciate what you are bringing to the table, right? I think it's like I feel like there's a surge of new creativity that's coming into the industry. Especially, I'm so inspired by shows like Metatopia, right, with these incredible diverse backgrounds. That is inspiring to like this old guy, right? That I'm inspired to make new games that I've never even thought of before. All right, sorry about that. Janet.
Yes, Eric.
May we have a question, please?
Yeah.
Sure. By the way, everybody, this is Vinny making the guest appearance as Janet and as your disembodied voice. I think each of these questions can be, you could wax poetic for about a half hour in each one of them, but we've got about 15 minutes left, so let's briefly go through them. So first one is from Tabletop PhD. Has Corona lockdown had any positive ramifications for game design?
Yes.
Yes. I think one, forcing a lot of people to learn more about social media and about digital gaming and about Twitch and about Tabletop Simulator, to think about games in a way that you might want to play them digitally. I think the same way that publishers really started thinking about solo variants and solo games last year and the year before. So people are really going to start thinking about, okay, but can we make this also playable over Zoom? Just as a side feature, because I don't think that's something that is necessarily going to go all the way away. It's just something that people didn't know they could do. Nobody knew you could play a game with grandma from across the country, but now we have to. So people are learning how to do it. So yeah, I think it has definitely added some things that people haven't thought about.
I think it's also given visibility to a lot of people that weren't able to get out to conventions physically. And while there are people who don't necessarily have computers, it's still giving visibility to people that want to attend these things and be a part of the community and would otherwise be overlooked. There's also been a lot more, as Eric mentioned, attention to social media. So there's been a lot of sponsorships and scholarships, Metatopia included, for people who, want to learn how to create digital versions of their games and want to figure out how to become a part of the community. And it might have been much harder to see them because there were less eyes looking. But, with everyone quarantining and kind of adjusting to not being at physical cons, I think it's given a lot more opportunity to fresh new voices and people to rise up.
My short, quick, selfish answer is that I think it gave relevance to two-player games, and I was in the process of designing one, and so it feels fortunate that people, I think, are more willing to engage and pick up those kinds of products now.
The game he's talking about is Hoop Gods, by the way. Now available. Late pledge Kickstarter, maybe?
We're still in it. We got 13 days left.
Oh.
What? Pledge now. Oh, yeah, that's right, because you were at 666 backers. I remember that. So I'll be quick, too. It has awakened a hunger for social play in the greater in the greater social fabric. In a way that we haven't seen before, right? And it's awakened it through absence, of course, right? So for what you can say about lockdown, right? Like Among Us, which is one of the most important games of our generation, I think, came out of that, and everybody's playing it, and it's no accident, right? The game's credible, the game's great, right? But the timing was perfect, and yes, things look bleak now, and they are what they are. But oh my God, like when any semblance of normalcy comes back, like we are going to ride a wave like we've never seen before. Janet.
Okay, next question is from Table Ready. Have you ever had a cool game mechanic idea that you've never quite been able to work into a game?
Yep, hundreds.
answer.
Yeah, I think you can answer that one for all of us. I don't think I've had enough time to try my end designs out yet.
I have this one that it's just killing me. The first trick taker I designed for a game crafter contest had this mechanic where both the highest and the lowest card won something. So you were trying to play for both ends, and it was a kind of an interesting system where like everybody got something, but you were trying to time it so that you got the thing that you wanted. So if you played the trump card or whatever, you got a great reward. But if you played the absolute lowest card, the garbage card, you got like a medium sized reward. But depending on the timing, it might be better for you than the great card was for the whatever. So anyway, you can see why it might not work from my explanation now.
It does actually. There's a goat game. There's a goat themed game, not a Bluxton. There's a goat themed game that's. I'll show it to you after the.
Oh yeah,
panel.
show it to me. Yeah. But yeah, that's one that it's in my back pocket. I gotta figure out how that works. So. All right. I guess next question.
I don't want to talk about. I'll say that I have hundreds. What I mean by that is, like, I'm thinking about stuff all the time, right? And to be a commercial game designer, you have to have infinitely more ideas than time to execute, right? Because there's and they have. I'm actually going to quote a stand-up comic to this, but there's a fruit-like quality to it too, right? Where like it like an idea will germinate for a while and become really fresh and you'll be really interested in it. But after a while, if it doesn't fit, it starts to get stale. And on its own, ideas are okay. It's okay, right? Like, I feel like, to me, since games are so much inspiration, if it's not working and it's not doing anything for me, I'll just like kind of leave it. And I've got so much other stuff I'd much rather be working on. I don't really have time to look back and go digging through the trash for other stuff. There's every once in a while I'll be like, oh, I'd love to do something with that, but it's usually just an idle musing because I'm so busy working on the stuff that I really want to be working on.
All right, let's go to the next question. Heather D. Newton, which of your games is your personal favorite to play?
Why? Oh man.
I'm just gonna jump out there.
We're all gonna say the same.
Omari. Yeah.
It's definitely Hoop Gods for me. I feel like just from a design and just elegance perspective, that game really, I think, shows off my skill in game design in a special way. And yeah, so I'll play it probably more than anything else, and it fascinates me almost every time still.
You're like a son to me, man.
For me, there's my favorite depends on my mood. I have a favorite game for every mood. So if I feel like laughing, playing with friends, then party game, mansplaining. If I feel like being evil, not that I would ever be evil, Book of Villainy. But if I feel like trick taking and lay it down the law, okay, Wicked and Wise. So my games are for my moods, and I'm gonna stick with that.
You need 3 answers. No.
Then I'm the winner.
I mean, Fertessa said it. Like, I can't. I'm not going to pick one. I like Omari's answer because Omari. That's when I said you're a son to me. I meant it because that's like it has to be the game I'm working on right now, right? It's got to be because otherwise, what? Like, why? Why am I working on it if it's not doing something special for it, right?
Yeah.
And that's like, fair. And that's not just like, I don't want to be like corporate PR, whatever, right? But like, I mean, artistically, it's got to be that. Granted, most of the games I'm in the middle of working on, I hate because it's nothing but problems, right? But I got to be obsessed with it.
Yeah,
obsessed. And sadly, I don't know about you all, but I don't have time to play a lot of my old games. It's horrible.
I'm going in that direction quickly, I think.
Yeah.
If I have to pick one, Oh gosh, my babies. I'm gonna say
There's only one correct answer.
Monstrosity.
That's right.
I think Monstrosity. If I had to play one just at the drop of a hat, because I think it brings a lot of the emotions and stuff that that I am really trying to bring to players. It moves a little bit faster, I think, than Tattoo Stories because there's not that pitching aspect. Although I do love the pitching aspect in Tattoo Stories. But there's something about the creatures and just the Eric, as you said, just the simple silliness of it that is really addictive, and it's definitely one where people are like, just one more, like just let's just flip another monster card. Let's do another one. So yeah, that's tough, but yeah, Monstrosity. I
love how we bullied you into that answer. Janet.
Okay, Give Me a Duck asks, are there any practices you see in other game designers that you really respect, things that you wouldn't do or consider but enjoy seeing, and things you see other designers do that makes you want to throw shade on them?
No shade in this panel.
Looking up someone's name right now. So hold on, pause, or go, and then I'll say somebody.
I have one definitely.
Go.
Should I go? Am I going? Okay.
Yeah.
I listened to it was on the Board Game Design Lab podcast. I think Peter C. Hayward was talking about blind playtesting and how upfront and how early in the process he begins blind playtesting, almost initially, and they're as hard as that is as a designer to do because it is a kind of petrifying process sometimes. I see so much value in putting that into the process really, really, really early, and I would love to, just do more of that with some of my designs moving forward.
Fertessa.
I'm thinking because it's something that's unique to that designer.
Yeah, it's a tough one, right? Because you don't really it's an inner artist thing, right? And not a lot of designers are super vocal online, right? And the funny thing is, what happens a lot is the discipline is so there's a word I'm looking for. Imagine that was really witty and I came up with a word. It's so adjective that like we just sort of absorb it. Right, we mind meld anyway. So once somebody's like gives us something really awesome, generally, if we like it, we're just going to use it.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. I've gotten so many things from.
So it's hard for I can't even answer that because I don't know. Oh, there we go. Sorry. Sid Saxon, because he's amazing, and everything that he made was done in a vacuum. There was nothing like it. So he got a lot of what he did, he traveled the world to buy board games, to buy obscure board games. And he made a discipline of that everywhere he went, just to buy something that nobody else has seen or get a single copy of. I wish I had the discipline to do that. I travel a lot. I don't do that all the time. Sorry, Eric.
Oh, you're good. Julio Nazario, which Eric, you posted about a few weeks ago, has a brain like for components and toys and that I am so astounded by, and he designed Control and Holy, and I've seen a bunch of his prototypes that haven't been signed yet, and I know he has to have a hell of a time pitching these games because they're all weird, very specific components, but it's one I can see a game set up from across, a convention hall. I'm like, oh, that's got to be one of Julio's games because it's it's a whole thing, and I immediately want to go play with it.
Check this out, Eric. I swear to God, this is true. Before this panel, my meeting before this panel was a game design meeting with Julio because we wanted to make a game together, and we literally just put a bow on it on the first iteration before we got here. Shout out to Julio Nazario, man. That guy,
Yeah.
he's a wonderkin for sure.
Yeah,
His brain.
he's amazing.
Janet.
All right, we did have one last question, but I don't really think we've got time for it. I do want to relay one comment from James Wallace. Saxon is the master. There's something to learn from every single game he designed.
James is correct, and there's James. By the way, James Wallace is the designer of the Adventures from Baron von Munchausen, which is one of my formative games. And if any of you, especially for Tessa, if you have not played it, I would try it. One of the few games I've ever played that made some of my players cry.
I'll look out for it.
Okay, folks, let's wrap this up.
Okay, thanks. So do you mind? I because you all are too humble. I want to talk you up a little bit. So
All right.
Omari Akil is he is what I consider to be the next generation entrepreneur in this industry. Guy does it all. He runs his own company, Board Game Brothers. Board Game Brothers. I can't. I said it bad. He has Hoop Gods on Kickstarter. You got to check it out. Follow him on Kickstarter. Follow him on Twitter. Smart ass dude. Just and socially conscious, which is a thing that matters. Fertessa Allyse is. I can't say enough. Right. Woe to any publisher who missed the chance to hire her. Too bad. Funko gained a great asset. She's a game producer at Funko, which means I predict that Fertessa is going to be one of the most dangerous, multi-talented designer, producer, developers out there. I don't know what path you're going to end up taking, but whichever one it is, you're going to absolutely crush it. And anybody who has a chance to learn from your journey, the only thing I hope is that you're more public about it, that you have a chance to share that with new designers, because I'm inspired by it. Eric Slauson is ridiculous and funny and fun, and Tattoo Stories is one of the most original concepts I've ever seen. It's in Target. That's still true, right? Thank God. It's in Target. Look, a new designer, right? A new designer, 6 years in, but a new designer who gets a game featured at Target, that means something, right? So his games are just fun. Anytime he makes a game, you've got to try it. There's a lot of party games out there, but there's a lot of his personality in them. I think they're amazing.